On the large bridge, shining in the last rays of twilight, stood a boy, thinking about his unbearable life and preparing to end it. Various terrible memories of failures of varying magnitude flashed through his head, one of them connected with his school life. Due to his own clumsiness, a boy named Sui-chan poured water on his classmate, to which she, naturally, responded by screaming at him in front of many friends. A group of schoolchildren are discussing themselves, expressing dissatisfaction with their classmate, and calling him a freak. Sui-chan simply stood there with his head down, and at his feet stood a bucket of water from the puddle that had doused the girl. When he tried to justify himself by saying that it was an accident and that the floor was slippery, the crowd only continued to insult him. Students call Sui-chan a liar, saying he always does something strange and then claims it was an accident. The girl, wiping the water off her head, also angrily says that this is not the first time, adding that the boy is a loser and brings bad luck to others. The crowd took up this insult, and Sui-chan only watched what was happening with fear and alarm. The next memory is connected with the boy's mother, who also called him a loser because he could not fill out the documents correctly, and did not get into an educational institution. The mother even asked Sui-chan why he is such a loser, since all these problems have been haunting him since childhood. In response to this, the person simply tries to say that the educational institution system was imperfect, and that a mistake was made during his inspection. After this, the mother tears up the rejection letter that Sui-chan received and says that there is always something wrong with him. She leaves the room, declaring that the boy is no longer her son and that she can never rely on him. Sui-chan, his face red from the blows and tears, just stood there, grimly holding back his tears and trying to figure out what to do next. The boy recalls that his entire short life was full of troubles, misfortunes and failures, and even his family gradually distanced itself from him because of this. About 10 years have passed since then, but Sui-chan's fate has not changed, despite all the wise sayings about 30 years. He believes that at least love is present in his life in the form of a devoted girlfriend. On that very day, on the 100th day of their relationship, the guy dared to propose, buying a bouquet of red roses with a card. Finally, Sui-chan notices the silhouette of his girlfriend and, smiling happily, prepares for this important step. However, suddenly the happy smile disappears from his face. The boy sees something terrible. The fear in his eyes makes him freeze in front of this picture. Sui-chan's girlfriend was accompanied by a man in a gray suit, who was holding her in his arms and laughing with her about something. The couple was heading to a taxi, and the man declared that the girl would have an unforgettable night, to which she only jokingly called him a spoiled brat. This action suddenly drained Sui-chan's strength, and the bouquet of red roses almost fell out of his hands. There was no emotion left on his face. It was replaced by a mask of apathy, and at that very moment the boy's phone rang. He got a call from work saying that this guy was responsible for the failure of his current project, so he was fired and might not come back. Hearing this message, Sui-chan, overwhelmed with emotion, angrily throws a bouquet of roses, a phone, and a card on the floor. He runs away from this place, from this life, thinking that he can no longer exist like this. It was at this moment that Sui-chan ran to the bridge and jumped off it, thinking about the unbearable hell he had been through. Reaching the water, the boy spreads his arms and wings, preparing to accept death and be freed from endless torture. Sui-chan secretly thinks that all he needs to do is hit rock bottom and all of this will finally end. However, the boy heard a cry, muffled by the water, but still loud, a plea for salvation, and he immediately opened his eyes. Believing that someone had fallen into the water and was in danger, Sui-chan saw a girl screaming for help in the water right above him. The boy decided to put his suicidal tendencies aside for a moment, and help this unfortunate woman, keeping the remaining air in his mouth and heading towards her. The girl continued to scream and call for help, creating strong splashes on the surface of the water, and becoming very exhausted. The next moment, Sui-chan's hand was on the girl's back, and the boy tried to help her swim and reach at least some stable surface. At the same time, it occurred to him that perhaps before his death he would be able to do at least one good deed in this world. The girl ran to the platform, grabbed it with her hand, and began coughing violently, trying to get rid of the fluid in her lungs. When she turned around to see who had saved her, there was no one behind her, so her tired gaze showed great surprise. Meanwhile, Sui-chan was rapidly approaching the river's end, preparing to finally die without such hindrances to his heroic deeds. He thought about dying and being freed from all the torments of the past, present and future, watching with half-closed eyes the rays of the sun breaking through the water. Sui Chin's head is filled with numerous insults directed at him and all sorts of terrible memories, which makes him consider himself cursed, but at the same time he thinks that everything will end soon. However, he only had to close his eyes and think about it, and the sunlight seemed to become brighter and closer to him. With great surprise, the boy saw a huge source of white light that seemed to pierce all the matter of water and defy the laws of physics. A male figure appeared in front of him, resembling a giant blue-green ghost, which Sui Chin mistook for God himself. After some reflection, he calmly begs God for help if the curse is really to blame for all his troubles. Meanwhile, the mechanical electronic said something about the successful activation of the ideal life system and the binding of the user to the system. When Sui Chin comes to, he thinks he has finally died, but he hears voices around him telling him that he has awakened and that he is the savior. This makes him realize that he failed to commit suicide and he is in some strange place, which causes a lot of tension. When the boy asks where he is, the girl he saved, accompanied by a doctor, replies that he is in the hospital. Sui Chin is told that he is incredibly lucky to survive, as the odds were slim, which is still very unusual for him to hear. The girl he saved smiled happily, glad that her savior had survived, and thanked him for his kind deed. There was also a journalist and a cameraman in the hospital room who approached Sui Chin to interview him about this heroic act. The boy watched all this in horror, realizing that he didn't remember anyone looking at him like that, and thinking that perhaps this was a turning point in his life. The next moment, a large flat hologram appeared in front of Sui Chin, sending him a reminder from the ideal life system, informing him that he had exactly 1 year left to live. A few hours later, the boy returns home to a large, dreary high-rise building made of red and brown blocks. He walks into his small studio apartment with minimal furniture, a dirty plate next to his computer, and white tiles on the floor. On the table, among the crumbs of food, large brown cockroaches were running around, and on the table stood a framed photograph of Sui Chin with his mother as a child. The boy takes off his shoes and thinks that after the heroic mission to save a person, nothing has changed in his life. However, turning to the door behind him, Sui Chin realizes that some changes are inevitable after all. The same sea-green vision appears through the studio door, its features simplified to the point of being emoji-like. Upon seeing this creature, Sui Chin realizes that this is the same strange guy who calls himself the System, whom he saw before waking up in the hospital. The boy closes the door behind him and asks the ghost why he only has a year to live, who he is, and what the ideal system of life is. However, he ignores Sui Chin, focusing entirely on the nearly empty plate next to the computer on his desk. A few seconds later, the ghost, with an unchanged expression, announces that he has identified the remains of the food, which included pieces of beef and potatoes, which prompts Sui Chin to answer his question. Hearing this, the ghost spread across the surface, turning into a strange liquid or slime, and announced the beginning of the user's request. The apartment around Sui Chin darkened slightly, which was obviously part of the demonstration of the system and its answers to the 3 questions asked. The system introduced the boy to a giant black shadow god, telling him that in his past life he was a bloodthirsty, ruthless, and unscrupulous dark god. The various sins of this deity provoked the righteous wrath of heaven, and the Lord of Heaven defeated the god and prepared a severe punishment for him. The shadow of the Lord of Heaven appeared before Sui Chin, who declared that his sins could not be forgiven and that the grief he had caused the world was incalculable. The Lord of Heaven said that he would send God to 10 earthly lives in the physical world, full of suffering as punishment, and with these sufferings he would have to atone for his own sins. To this, as the image adds, when the dark god's 10th life ends, the Lord of the Heavens himself will destroy him forever. With this, the demonstration of Sui Chin's backstory as an evil deity ended, and the ghosts of the system began to gather together again. When this ghost appeared, he began to tell the story further, claiming that this was the last, 10th life, and that the Lord of Heaven, seeing repentance, decided to give the boy a second chance. This second chance is an ideal life system, and the ghost is its embodiment, which, according to Sui Chin, allows it to be considered an artificial intelligence. The boy himself, with a nervous smile on his face, says that this is too much, and suggests that he has started hallucinating due to a lack of oxygen. The ghost explained that it was all true and said that he would help as soon as he could and as soon as Sui Chin ordered him, but he was interrupted by an angry knock on the door and a shout. The woman ordered the door to be opened, but the man, recognizing her as his landlady, quickly panicked. Remembering that the ghost was supposed to help him, Sui-Chin turns to him with a frightened expression and asks if there is anything he can do to help in this situation. The ghost states that the user's needs have been identified and announces the opening of the Ideal Life System store panel. The open panel displayed various houses, stocks, and even airplanes from which the system offered a choice. Sui-Chin didn't understand how any of this could help him. Therefore, the boy orders the ghost to choose the most appropriate combination of things for the given situation, since time for reflection is already running out. The system confirms and states that the request has been accepted and the appropriate combination of elements has been selected for the given situation. The screen displays a list of prizes, including a prestigious CEO position, a Ferrari, a trained aid organization, and a cash prize, and asks which one is most suitable. At this moment, the owner of the house opens the apartment door and shouts at her tenant in surprise. However, the next moment the woman stopped and fell silent, her face slightly flushed with embarrassment. In front of her on the floor lay Sui-Chin, who now seemed to her a handsome young man with an attractive face, strong muscles and perfect forms, especially emphasized by his posture. The girl, with a loving look, asked him if he had been going to the gym lately, and if so, why he didn't tell her anything about it, showering her with compliments about his muscles. The girl then mentions that Sui-Chin is not in a romantic relationship and perhaps he could visit her tonight, to which he replies that not today. The guy said he would pay the rent after he took a shower, but the girl told him not to worry about it and left the apartment. Realizing that the owner had left, Sui-Chin finally breathed a sigh of relief, but suddenly received a notification on his phone. The boy took out his phone, thinking he had thrown it away when he ran to jump into the water, but the notification came from the bank. The notice stated that 100,000 yuan had been transferred to his account, which he stared at for a long time with wide eyes. The system ghost informs that there is more to come and shows a panel of company shares owned by Sui-Chin, with a message that the company secretary will contact him later. They also delivered a Ferrari car, which made the boy incredibly happy. He couldn't believe his luck. Sui-Chin falls to his knees and, with tears in his eyes, thanks the Heavenly Lord for the system, declaring that he will pray every day from now on. The ghost says that the guy is in too much of a hurry because the system presentation is not yet complete. He argues that this system is primarily a challenge. Sui-Chin will have to complete certain tasks to increase his virtue level, and he only has 1 year to do so. When the virtue stat reaches 100%, the curse of the heavenly ruler will be lifted, but if this does not happen within a year, the boy will die. After this, the ghost states that the presentation is over, but shows the final screen. In it, in addition to general information about the rules, special attention was paid to the fact that after receiving a reward, the level of virtue and luck would be reset, which greatly worried Sui-Chin. The boy immediately asked the system if this notification means his luck will remain the same as before his suicide attempt. The system ghost confirms this, stating that Sui-Chin's current virtue level is 0. To this he adds that the boy needs to contribute another percentage of virtues to activate the ideal life system, so now his luck will be even a little worse than before. Sui-Chin goes to the water cooler to pour himself a glass of water and calm down a little after this terrible news. And it is at this moment that the decreased luck indicators become apparent, because at that very moment the guy burns his hands while trying to pour himself hot water. A glass of water falls onto an extension cord lying on the floor and causes a strong electric shock, which shocks Sui-Chin's leg. As a result, due to overload, the electrical panel burns out completely, accompanied by characteristic electrical sounds and a burning smell. Naturally, this resulted in most of the residents of this building being left without electricity, which caused surprised questions and irritation. 2 men approached the electrical panel, one of whom was wearing only a towel, apparently having just finished a shower. Both were perplexed as to how the panel could have burned out. When Sui-Chin walked out of his apartment, the towel-clad man who had just been complaining about who could do such a thing immediately turned his angry gaze on him. The boy tried to turn around and leave, but the man ordered him to stop and explain the situation. Sui-Chin ran away, casually claiming that he was just a passerby, to which the man asked why he was sneaking in, and whether he was to blame for the incident. The boy ran to his new red car, hoping to hide in it for a while for his own safety. The ghost of the system was already sitting there, and in his company, Sui-Chin was thinking about how good it was that he had escaped so quickly, and whether he would be lucky enough to survive the next situation. However, even such thoughts did not prevent the boy from enjoying his new luxury car, which he looked at with a wide smile. He drew the ghost's attention to the steering wheel, to the display, praising his new car in every possible way. The ghost reminded Sui-chin to keep an eye on the time remaining until the end of the year, to which Sui-chin replied that the system could make him happy even for a while. Before the ghost could answer, the boy's phone suddenly alerted him to a call he needed to answer. After an awkward greeting, Sui-chin heard someone calling himself Fatty announce his school's alumni party, which he had to attend. He stated that the boy needed to put someone in their place and make them look at him with respect, adding that they would see each other soon. The ghost of the system formulated the task like this: Sui-chin needs to go to the alumni reunion and do something that will leave his classmates speechless. The boy only angrily replied that he had no one to take with him, since the girl had dumped him yesterday, adding that he would become a laughingstock at this meeting. He also mentions that the party was actually being hosted by Song Haoren and his friends, who weren't very kind to him. The boy remembers a dark school toilet and 3 figures in front of him, blood from his mouth, someone else's saliva on his own face and torn, dirty notes. In the end, Sui-chin claims that the 3 bullied him at school as much as they could and wanted. The system ghost stared at the boy for a few seconds with his distinctive, emoji-like face, which had minimal detail. Afterwards, he asked Sui-chin if it would only take a few minutes, since he only needed to hand over a few gift bags to show off his new status. Thanks to this, the boy can not only complete the task, but also put his old enemies in their place. Sui-chin reflects on this shyly, noting that his school past is not the same as his present as an adult. The boy claims that he now understands everything from the ghost's words and says that they need to drive by pressing the gas pedal in the car. However, suddenly the car stopped completely. As it turned out a little later, the fuel tank was open, which the ghost of the system only laughed at. After some time, Sui-chin reached his destination when a restaurant employee approached him and informed him that parking was prohibited near them. The man rolls down the windows of his car and tells the employee that he is in a hurry, asking her to help him out of the car. The girl was clearly shocked by the attractive appearance of the owner of this car, and was unable to react adequately, since Sui-chin had already left. The man introduces himself, takes the employee's hand to hand her the car keys, and says he'll leave it to her, and she agrees, blushing with embarrassment. Sui-chin, reflecting on the fact that this is his first time doing something like this, remarks that he is indeed not used to such things. The ghost of the system asks if the boy knows about such an ability, as the behavior of the president holding a small screen in his hands. The screen showed a man and a woman in an elegant pose, and the system told Sui-chin to maintain this behavior throughout the evening, and then everything would go smoothly. Having cheered himself up a little and convinced himself that he was capable of anything, the boy entered the main hall of the restaurant, where his old acquaintances had already gathered. As Sui-chin walked towards the center of the hall, he thought that he would become a better person if he completed the task of reuniting with his classmates. The boy sees many familiar faces and understands that now he will have to somehow interact with everyone present in order to complete the task. However, he doesn't exactly know how to behave with them to demonstrate his new status. Simply approaching them and starting to talk about money and luxury seems like a losing strategy. Suddenly, Sui-chin notices a very familiar and important figure in the depths of the luxurious hall of this restaurant. His face turns slightly red because this is the same girl he had a crush on back in school. The girl's name was Lihani. She had red hair and wore a short black dress. She stood at the bar with a cocktail in her hand, thinking about something. The guy decided to come up and say hello to his old friend, but something stopped him. The waiter, who was carrying a plate with several glasses of wine, suddenly lost his balance and spilled several glasses on Sui-chin. The sounds of glass, metal, and the waiter's energetic movements attracted the attention of all the boy's classmates, foreshadowing his next failure. Instead, Sui-chin merely looked at the stain on his suit with concern as the waiter bowed, begging for forgiveness. While the waiter anxiously tried to wipe away the stain and apologized, the boy only saw everyone around him looking at him with a slightly mocking expression on their faces. In the crowd, he heard his classmates arguing that he was Sui-chin, the loser of their class, and laughing at themselves. Unable to withstand such pressure, the boy runs away, replying that he is not okay and that he is very sorry. While running, Sui-chin continues to hear the ridicule of his classmates, who call him the same worthless person he was in school. The guy locked himself in the toilet and sat down, sadly thinking that luck had let him down again and everything remained the same. Suddenly, a system ghost appeared in the toilet stall, much to the chagrin of Sui-chin, who angrily ordered it to appear in a more normal form. After a short skirmish, the ghost, with an unchanged expression on his face, asks how the task is progressing. To this, Sui-chin responds with silence, a sad expression on his face, and his head bowed. After such a pause, the boy says in a sad tone that he feels he will not be able to complete the task assigned to him, which surprises the ghost. He says that unless he gets lucky, he will look like a fool in the eyes of others, remembering how similar things happened to him at school. The ghost suddenly interrupts Sui-chen's monologue and, much to the latter's surprise, tells him to do nothing. To this, the boy responds with a series of questions about whether he will die if he simply refuses, as mentioned earlier, believing that the ghost also considers him a failure. With an unusually serious and detailed expression, the system asks that if Sui-chen really wants this, then let him receive the value of virtue. Such an ominous phrase, combined with the expression on his face, causes the boy some shock, so he doesn't know what to answer. However, a few seconds later, the ghost explains with a smile that Sui-chen can no longer exchange items without virtue, but if he completes the task, his capital will grow. The ghost then states that the boy now has a luxury car, money and stocks, so impressing his classmates shouldn't be such a difficult task. He adds that, especially if people look at him like trash, he doesn't want to show them their true place. Classmates think that it is the same Sui-chen in front of them, but at the moment it is a completely different person, chosen by heaven. The ghost talks about this and encourages the boy to complete the task, continuing to claim that he has changed, just as his relationships with his classmates have changed. Sui-chen is full of confidence, and sincerely understands that he is no longer the one who bore his name, and that is why he must complete the task and lift the curse. As soon as the boy came out, he heard a female voice calling him, claiming that it was indeed Sui-chen. It was Lihani, she continued, expressing surprise that the boy had come to Sun Haoran's party. The boy only repeated her name excitedly, surprised that the girl he had been in love with for so long had spoken to him first. Lihani claimed that the alumni reunion was nothing more than Sun Haoran bragging about his new position as vice president of his father's company. Sui-chen, in turn, claims that he got the impression that they did not know each other very well, so he asks why the girl approached him. A classmate, with some irritation and restraint, reminds the boy of an unpleasant incident that happened between them in high school. When Sui-chen asks what exactly is wrong, the girl accuses him of pretending. Lihani says that one day, a boy snuck into the dance troupe's dressing room and spied on her while she was changing. Sui-chen instantly recalls this incident, saying that at that moment he really didn't want to do anything like that, and it happened by accident. The teacher asked him to take his things to the locker room, and the boy entered, not expecting to see anyone, because he had asked the cleaning lady in advance if there was anyone else in the locker room. Lihani adds that the boy ran away like a true coward, to which Sui-chen replies that she beat him so badly that he feared for his ribs. Suddenly, someone from the crowd interrupts their conversation, asking what all the noise is going on between the classmates. Upon seeing the girl, Sun Haoran immediately began showering her with compliments, calling her the flower of the school and claiming that she was still so beautiful after so many years. He even offers the girl to join his company, claiming that he will provide her with a managerial position. The girl refuses, saying that she has just signed a contract with the Galaxy Group and will become their advertising model. The crowd starts to discuss how successful the company is and how suitable and worthy this position is for Lihani, which causes some tension in Sun Haoran. However, he later notices Sui-chen in front of him, calls him miserable and wonders why he even came to the party. Sun Haoran said that he heard that this guy had bad luck with his wine earlier in the evening, and that he has bad luck in life in general, especially with money. However, he says that no matter how insignificant Sui-chen is, he is willing to offer help and that, in the end, his classmates should help him. A boy offers his former classmate a job as a personal driver, boasting that it will be the best job of his life. Sui-chen says he doesn't need the job, refuses a handshake, and pushes away the hand his classmate extends to him. Sun Haoran, with a reddened palm, only irritably tries to say something to the boy, but he is interrupted. Sui-chen thanks him for his help, but says that he joined the Galaxy Group just like Hanya, which was obviously a good idea, otherwise he would have become like Sun Haoran. It seemed that the same man immediately shouted out to the entire restaurant what the boy meant. A few seconds later, Sun Haoran decides to ask which division of Galaxy Group his classmate works in, not believing that he could even work in such a company. Lihani watches this silently, also unsure if Sui-chen is telling the truth and not just trying to show off something she doesn't have. The same answers that allow everyone to think whatever they want about it, but he works in the main department of the Galaxy Group company. Honey notes that Sui Chen's behavior rather confirms this, and mentally adds that she has never seen such confidence and charm in him. Sun Haoran was surprised and asked how his classmate had managed to achieve such success and occupy such a high position. To this, Sui Chen confidently replies that they are now gathered for a class reunion, and not for personal criticism directed at him, adding that perhaps Haoran himself feels insecure. The classmate tries to wriggle out of the situation, hesitantly claiming that he had no such intentions at all. The tension between Honey, Haoran, and Sun Chen was obvious and attracted the attention of everyone in the hall. Suddenly, this tension is interrupted by a male voice shouting something about money and the wrong attitude towards it. One of my classmates told me how he had to look for a parking space because someone's Ferrari was parked right outside the restaurant. Sun Haoran is surprised to hear about a Ferrari with a license plate, and doesn't understand which of his classmates can afford to drive one. A classmate says the car could have been seen just now if you open the curtains, which many do. It's a red Ferrari. He adds that it's unlikely that the car belongs to any of his classmates. People gathered at the windows, discussing how beautiful the car was, how proud the owner was of it, and that it cost about 4 million yuan. Sun Haoran intervenes in the conversation and says that this is an unusual Ferrari, made from environmentally friendly materials, which increases its value to 6 million. He then says that the owner of this Ferrari must be very rich, since this car is twice as expensive as his Maserati, and adds that he would very much like to meet this person. Meanwhile, Li Hani turns to Sui Chen as everyone continues to discuss the luxury car. He sits quietly on a small chair, cross-legged, and drinks red wine. Meanwhile, Sun Haoran also pays attention to him and says that the boy must have seen a lot of luxury cars while working at Galaxy Group, adding that he is curious to see Sui Chen's own car. Meanwhile, the same employee who first met the boy at the entrance to the restaurant enters the hall and looks for him, addressing him as Mr. Sui. Finally, the girl sees him in the chair and says with a smile that she had been looking for him for a long time after that meeting. She bows and hands back the keys to the Ferrari, saying that she has never driven such an expensive car and would not dare, so she asks him to park it again. This instantly causes an electric shock in all the classmates present, who are not even able to react normally to the knowledge they have received. Sui Chen says that he has already greeted everyone, so there is no point in reparking the car, and tells the girl to mind her own business. The guy who was talking about the Ferrari at the beginning immediately hugs Sui and asks when he became so fancy, to which he replies that it's just a car. To this he adds somewhat superficially that money is something outside the body, and the more material it is, the more superficial it is. In the end, Sui Chen, looking at Sun Haoran, declares that no matter how much money he has, everyone here is equal, and he does not use his status to divide people into castes. A crowd of classmates cheers the boy on in his speech, saying that they are truly more important to each other than money, and raise their glasses to their friend. At that very moment, a panel invisible to the others appears in front of Sui Chen with a notification about the completion of the task assigned to him, and a reward in the form of 5% of virtues. The crowd continues to cheer, many offering more drinks, and more, and all attention switches from Sun Haoran to the new star of the evening. The guy stepped aside, cursed Sui Chen in irritation, and said that we would see what the future brought. Meanwhile, not far from the restaurant, in the same red Ferrari, a girl was sitting and broadcasting, telling her subscribers about herself. She said she didn't expect to see such a luxurious car while walking around the city this evening, adding that despite the luxury, it is not very comfortable to drive. The girl says that since she has never driven such a car, her opinion is unlikely to change if she has the experience that Sui Chen, who just left the restaurant, has already observed. Streamer Lisa was warned in the comments about a man hiding behind her, but she only reacted when he turned towards her, losing his balance. Sitting in front of Ferrari, she didn't know how to react to this whole situation, while Sui Chen somehow bowed to her. As it turned out, he took Lisa's phone, jokingly stating that the live broadcast was still ongoing. With her head down, the girl turned to Sui Chen, apologized, and said that she didn't want to get into his car. After this, Lisa, with a sad expression on her face, asked the guy to return her phone. Sui Chen replies that he would be happy to return it, but asks what he should do about the scratch on the car that the girl left after the fall. The guy says that he offers the girl 2 options for solving the problem, the first of which is monetary compensation, to which Lisa replies that she cannot afford it. Therefore, according to Sui Chen, only the second option for solving this problem remained in her work. He then points the phone at them and tells the girl to get in the car, which prompts a flurry of comments from people with varying levels of arousal. Lisa is confused when Sui-chin opens the car door and pushes her inside. At the same time, the guy continues to film and broadcast her. The girl, frankly speaking, is scared and shocked by all of this. Sui-chin, watching the broadcast, says that Lisa's channel's popularity is growing very quickly. After this, he gets behind the wheel, places the phone in the display part of the car so that the broadcast screen shows everything that is happening, and tells the girl that the viewers like this kind of story. Lisa tries to get out of the car, saying that she will return the money to the boy, but he abruptly stops her. Sui-chin grabs the girl's hand and holds it tightly so that she doesn't dare run away. He then asks Lisa how many tens of thousands of dollars she can afford to pay for this car. To this the girl modestly and embarrassedly replies that she will not be able to pay such a large sum. Sui-chin, to the approval of the viewers, says that it is just a trip and he needs Lisa's help to get home because he is drunk and cannot drive. Lisa asks if he really just needs a ride home and is a little surprised by the request. Sui-chin agrees and tells her to hurry up if she doesn't want to pay compensation. After a few minutes of driving, the girl nervously asks if she is driving well enough, saying that she has never had such an experience with such an expensive car. Sui-chin reacts to this with anger, and tells her that she has had enough, causing the girl to even fear for her life a little. The guy approaches her indecently, with a displeased expression on his face, to which Lisa only asks with delight what he is doing. Coming closer, Sui-chin asks how a girl can drive without wearing a seat belt, which prompts excited comments from passers-by, some of whom feel the need to call the police. After some time, the policeman actually knocked on the car window, and at first the boy didn't even understand who was making the noise. He was very scared when he saw the uniform, but the policeman instead greeted him and asked him to leave in the car. After some time, in a strange and inexplicable way, the car ended up near a police station. It turned out that Lisa had abandoned Sui-chin, leaving him in this place and running as far away from the suspicious man as possible. However, the guy should have thought about it, because he noticed a note in which the girl wrote that she did not know his address, so she took him to the police, also writing down her phone number in case of compensation. Meanwhile, the ghost asks Sui-chin about his opinion on virtues, to which he replies that they are not that difficult to acquire. The boy is also surprised that he has not been arrested, even though the police are right there, to which the ghost explains that his luck level has returned to normal, so this couldn't have happened. Sui-chin points out that things aren't actually that bad, and the party even went off without a hitch yesterday after that wine incident. Meanwhile, the ghost suggests that the boy change his address to something more appropriate to his current situation. Sui-chin can only think about how to change this, considering that he has almost nothing left of those 100,000 yuan. To this the ghost replies that, of course, all this is in exchange for virtues, for the interest he earned for his first task. He then displays a panel of currency exchange examples he has prepared based on the exchange options available to Sui-chin. The man carefully studies the options offered by the system and begins to consider his options. He was presented with luxurious villas, both in a modern style and those that were apparently outstanding historical monuments. All of these things cost him 5% of his virtue, which made Sui-chin believe that if he acquired even one of these properties, his luck would disappear again. The boy chooses something else, and the ghost asks him to show what exactly was chosen to activate the exchange. The system sees that there are only 4 rooms in the Jianyang district, which Sui-chin attributes to a frugal purchase, as he only spends 1% of his virtue. The system seems to be hinting that in this case they should inspect this guy's new house. The red Ferrari pulls up and a slightly tense expression appears on Sui-chin's face at what he sees. 4 security guards in classic black suits and sunglasses stood in front of the car, apparently waiting for him. Sui-chin wondered anxiously if he had underestimated himself by spending only 1% of his virtues on such a purchase. Finally, one of the guards approaches the car window and, knocking on it, greets the boy. He then picks up the phone with the boy's photo and asks if it is Mr. Sui-chin in front of him now. The man answers somewhat reservedly that it is he who is depicted in the photograph and that this is the same gentleman. The guards were a little dubious, as the man in front of them looked much better than in the photograph, but Sui-chin irritably confirmed his identity to them. Later, the young man and his retinue arrived at the place, which was a truly luxurious estate in the neoclassical style. Parking nearby, Sui-chin met the rest of the guards and servants at the entrance to the elite area. The venerable footman bowed to his new master and pointed out the direction in which they should move. The man led Sui-chin down a wide avenue lined with classical sculptures and fountains to the estate's grand entrance. The estate shone with luxury. The walls were hung with copies of famous paintings such as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Sui-chin was incredibly surprised by such wealth and asked who owned this estate. Suddenly he hears a female voice claiming that this house has been prepared by the Galaxy Group for a new major shareholder. Later, the girl rephrased this to mean that the estate now belonged directly to Sui-chin. A girl with long gray hair, dressed in a maid's uniform, greeted her new master, claiming to be his butler and personal maid. The maid bowed to Sui-chin and introduced herself as Carly. For a moment, the young man's brain stopped working, unable to resist the beauty of the maid and the very fact that she worked for him. When Sui-chin came to his senses a little, he immediately asked the butler if she was sure that everything around him belonged to him. The girl answers in the affirmative, adding that 10 years ago, the Galaxy Group company built a number of similar residential complexes with management teams for its main shareholders. Then Carly clapped her hands, showing off her team. In an instant, Sui-chin is surrounded by a dozen uniformed servants who bow to their new master. After this, they greet each other in chorus and declare that everything in this estate belongs to the boy. At this point, the butler, Carly, decides to add something to this statement and attracts the attention of the owner. The girl claims that, just as everything here belongs to Sui-chin, she herself belongs to this category. Naturally, the young gentleman's wild imagination couldn't handle such words, and he even started bleeding from the nose. Some time later, Sui-chin wakes up in the bedroom of his estate under rather awkward circumstances. He lies on Carly's lap, she puts her hand on his forehead and finally notices that the boy is awake. Sui-chin gets up and asks what happened, to which the maid assures him that he is fine, he was just very excited and felt dizzy. The boy takes the bloody tissues out of his nose, thinking about how embarrassing it was. After coming to his senses, he asks the butler when he needs to go to work at Galaxy Group. After this, Carly asks with only some surprise in her eyes why Sui-chin goes to work. A man asks whether he should take a position in the company as one of the largest shareholders. At this point, the butler briefly introduces Sui-chin to the company's system, where major decisions are made by the 4 largest shareholders, and important positions are held by shareholders on the board of directors. Although this guy is on this board of directors, the position he was supposed to fill is not that important at this point, so Carly should do some research at the parent company first, and report the results to the guy later. When Sui-chin asks about her current source of income, she gives him a credit card that pays dividends in stocks every year. A man looks at a map and thinks that due to bad luck his money could suddenly disappear, so he needs to find some kind of permanent source of income. He instantly understands how exactly he should spend these funds in order to regularly receive new ones. Meanwhile, the action moves to the Jiangyang district with its numerous high-rise buildings, where the middle class lives happily. Honey walks around the area and talks on the phone with her parents about work and her brother. The mother insists that her brother should have a place to live when he moves to her city to study, but the girl tries to deny it. Suddenly crossing the road, Honey almost gets into a car accident, but like her mother, she continues to abruptly change direction. The girl angrily responds to the driver who almost hit her, which her mother completely does not understand from the context. Honey says that she understands everything that was said, but she is in a hurry to get to work, so she hangs up, tired of listening to all this. Later, she notices a man of about 60 standing near the notice board and either sticking up or taking down an ad. The girl immediately runs up to him, and calling him uncle, asks if he is suddenly renting out some apartment. The man says he rented out his apartment a long time ago, and came here to post an ad. Honey then asks if he knows where he can rent a room, to which he replies that all the rooms in the area have long been sold out, and he should look elsewhere. The girl does not give in to interrogation and says that looking elsewhere is very expensive, adding that she is ready to shoot anyone. Uncle, with a dissatisfied expression, notes Honey's particular persistence. He eventually advises her to look for accommodation in the back part of the area, but warns that the rooms there are quite expensive. The girl approaches the notice board in this part of the building and, seeing a man nearby, asks if he has an apartment for rent. That man, of course, turns out to be Sui-chin, who was caught with a rubber band in his mouth and a puzzled expression on his face. Recognizing him, Honey couldn't believe her eyes and asked what the boy did in response. After some time, the girl asks Sui-chin what he is doing in this area and whether he suddenly settled here. He replies that he doesn't live here and just came to post an ad for renting out a place in the Jiangfu district. Li-hani quickly glanced at the ad and wondered if the boy really didn't live in the area. The girl, becoming even more suspicious of Sui-chin, asked where his luxury car was, to which he replied that it was parked in the parking lot because there was no space. There was even more distrust in Li-hani's eyes, to which the boy responded with some irritation, stating that she didn't believe him. Suddenly, Sui-chin's phone rang, accompanied by a ringtone and a strong vibration in his trouser pockets. It was a potential tenant who was inquiring about the property, to which the man replied that the house was still empty and advised him to look at a suitable option. After hanging up, Sui-chin wonders why Li-hani doesn't believe him about his new financial situation. The girl says that it was completely unexpected that the guy became a real estate agent, and adds that she didn't think he was capable of working in the service industry. When the boy tries to say something, Li-hani claims that he most likely rented a car that day and advises him to stop doing such things. This rejection causes the boy great anger, but his subsequent actions, caused by this anger, seem illogical. He decides to lie to the girl about stealing his boss's car as if the houses belong to his boss and does so in anger and emotionally. Li-hani supports him and says that she understands, adding that next time she shouldn't be afraid and that she wouldn't want the guy to be caught in a lie. Sui-chin changes the subject and asks why the girl seemed to want to rent an apartment by offering her services. Li-hani replies that he really needs to rent an apartment, but he has a very limited budget. Meanwhile, two boys were riding bicycles nearby, one of whom, not paying close attention to what was happening, risked crashing into passers-by. Sui-chin notices this and tries to push Li-hani away to avoid a possible fight, saying it is dangerous. Eventually, the cyclist notices them too, but can do nothing but look at them in fear. The boy crashes into Sui-chin's back, sending him flying into the air above his bike and all three of them falling. His friend, also a cyclist, advises him to run away from there as quickly as possible to avoid trouble. Meanwhile, Sui-chin, clutching his head, tries to come to his senses, cursing that cyclist along the way. The ghost of the system appears and reports that, thanks to the boy's attention, his virtue level has increased by 0.1%. Finally, Sui-chin notices Li-hani lying next to him on the pavement and asks if she is okay. To his great regret, the boy grabbed the girl by the chest with his left hand and did not let go of her the whole time, which did not bode well. Li-hani calls him a fraud and slaps him in the face, and the system issues a warning about his virtue score decreasing by 1%. Sui-chin tries to justify himself by saying that it happened by accident, but the girl doesn't want to listen. A few minutes later, the boy returns to her with water, medicine, and a popsicle, hoping to at least make up for his guilt. After this, Sui-chin only watches Li-hani guiltily, while the ghost of the system stands aside. Eventually, the ghost intervenes, saying something dubious about the boy having done nothing wrong and having done better in his past life. However, Sui-chin's irritated look was enough to end this speech. Meanwhile, Li-hani decided to apply a bottle of cold water to her injured leg to cool it down and dull the pain. Watching this, Sui-chin says he bought water for her to just drink instead of using the ice cream as a cold compress. The girl, somewhat irritated, replies that she will use these things at her own discretion. Hearing this, the boy puts the medicine in the bag, which surprises Li-hani a little. Sui-chin comes closer and asks permission to apply the medicine to his leg as retribution for what he did. He squeezes the gel into his hands and gently spreads it over the reddened area of his leg, massaging it at the same time. The guy tells the girl that she should be patient because it might hurt, and she just watches him. Li-hani looked at Sui-chin and thought to herself how handsome he was, especially after such a kind deed. When the guy asked her if it had gotten better, and if the pain had subsided, the girl silently confirmed it. Sui-chin's gaze lingered on the leg, and his aura changed slightly, turning into a black cloud. The guy with a wide aggressive smile says that he would really like to lick this foot. This was naturally followed by a few seconds of awkward silence between Sui-chin and Li-hani, as the latter could not even imagine anything like this. As soon as the girl came to her senses, she immediately kicked the guy in the face, calling him a pervert. After this, Li-hani hurriedly left, which was noticed by the ghost, who was now unable to see the damage on her leg. Meanwhile, Sui-chin felt sorry for himself, thinking about how he could say such a thing. Finally, with tears in his eyes and a bleeding nose, he talks about how difficult it is for him to behave with girls. The ghost tells the hysterical boy that he should work harder and pay more attention, as his virtue level is currently negative. Suddenly, someone decided to call out to Shui, which briefly interrupted the boy's tears. From the conversation it became clear that the caller was a certain Uncle Khan, to whom the boy confirmed his name. In the end, this uncle suggested that Sui Chunwei go on a blind date with someone. A few hours later, the action moves to the airport, where a crowd is enthusiastically discussing a luxury car and guessing who is driving it. Those who looked into the car saw a beautiful girl and noted her beauty and sense of style in clothing. However, the crowd's attention suddenly turned to the car driving behind the girl, which aroused her great curiosity. Behind the wheel of the luxurious red Ferrari 488 parked behind her was, of course, Sui Chen. Suddenly, two cars pulled out onto the road parallel to each other, and the driver was able to see the owner of the car. Seeing him, the girl modestly, but not without interest, notes that the young man is very handsome. Sui Chen, on the contrary, looks the most bored and hardly notices everything that is happening around him. Finally, the girl dares to ask the guy if he has anyone, without any special ceremony. To this, Sui Chen replies that he was set up on a blind date, and Sui Chen replies that she came to pick up her friend. The driver adds that this friend was also invited on a blind date, which she is trying to avoid by saying she will be late and leaving. At that moment, a girl in a long black dress and with long purple hair appears next to the two cars, holding a suitcase in her hands and waving to her friend. The driver tells her to get in the car quickly because they need to hurry, in case her boyfriend, whom she met on a blind date, has already arrived. Suddenly, the girl notices Sui Chen in a red Ferrari and looks at him with wide eyes in surprise. Blushing slightly with embarrassment, she asks the boy if it is really Sui Chen in front of her. The guy greets her modestly and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, calling her Yuxian. After this, they both recall events from 10 years ago, when they were still in school. Yuxian watched from behind the wall as his father told the boy that his mother had left home the previous night. He tells him that he must give him the money and the keys to the apartment because his mother asked him to. The boy looks sadly at the money and keys, unable to understand why his mother abandoned him. Uncle Han tells him that he knows he will take the college entrance exam and that he is his mother's son despite her actions, to which Sui Chen thanks him and leaves. When the boy had moved away a little, the man, with a sad expression on his face, said that he felt incredibly sorry for him, to which Yuxian asked if it was his fault. The girl tries to say that the boy killed his father himself, but Khan silences her. The man orders her not to talk such nonsense, and not to listen to everything that passers-by say. Looking at the boy, Uncle Han says that he is very unhappy. After some time, the blind date finally began, and Sui Chen sat in a restaurant with Yuxian and her friend, not knowing how to start a conversation. The man decides to yell at the waiter in order to divert his attention and the attention of his female companions. Watching this, Yuxian mentally notes, if this is the same boy, then he has changed a lot. The girl's friend whispered to her why she hadn't told her how rich and handsome her companion was, to which the girl replied that she hadn't seen him for 100 years and barely recognized her. Finally, a waiter came to their table and, after greeting them politely, asked what they would like to order. Yuxian says the boy can choose for himself, but her friend jokingly adds that she will eat everything. Sui Chen recalls Uncle Han's words, but replies that he is no longer the same person he used to be. First, the guy decides to order a large bluefin tuna, as well as crab and beef steaks. However, later he tells the waiter to forget about all this and bring what is on the menu. Such an order leaves the waiter in shock, because serving such clients with extravagant dishes is no easy task. Sui Chen's statement also greatly shocked Yuxian and her friend. They did not expect this at all. Meanwhile, the waiter tries to explain that even their cheapest dish is quite expensive, so such an order may be out of reach for many. Yuxian, meanwhile, believes that this boy is either an upstart or incredibly rich, but it is unknown exactly when he became so. The ghost of the system tells Sui Chen that his companion thinks he is too rich and is very angry about it. Meanwhile, the girl's friend says that it is better to order only a few dishes, since it will not be possible to eat everything anyway. Sui Chen says that it's okay, they don't need to pay and they can enjoy the food. Yuxian says that ordering so much is too expensive and apologizes for not seeing him for so long. The ghost tells Sui Chen how caring and attentive this girl is to him. A man asks a waiter how many free tables they have and then asks him to tell the other guests to leave when they are finished, adding that he will pay for everything. At this point, Yuxian's patience wears thin, and she decides to stop her companion from doing such things. The girl angrily and irritably states that Sui-chin should not behave like this, saying that she knows him well. The man ignores this and shows his card, which receives annual dividend payments from Galaxy Group. Sui-chin hands the card to the waiter, and says there is no need to worry as he will pay for everything in advance. The ghost reports that the boy is treated with contempt, and therefore his task is to subdue Yuxian. The man tells his companion that he is the CEO of the Galaxy Group and therefore quite wealthy. He says this to avoid a lot of awkward questions, and Yuxian meanwhile asks the boy in surprise. Her friend wonders if Sui-chin can really become the CEO of Galaxy Group. In his thoughts, the boy asks the ghost of the system if this is enough to complete the task of enslavement, to which it remains silent. Meanwhile, the waiter returns to them with a business card and addresses Sui-chin with a very tense expression, trying to maintain a polite smile. He claims that there is absolutely no money on the card he was given. Later, Sui-chin comes out with a credit card terminal and tries to pay, but a notification appears saying the balance is 0. Not understanding what is happening to his card, the boy tries to swipe it again, and again, and again. Eventually, he feels the atmosphere is tense and people in the restaurant are talking about him as a boastful loser. Sui-chin laughs with exaggerated expressiveness, but his laughter is rather hysterical. To the surprise of his companions, the guy apologized to the waiter and said that it was his mistake. Sui-chin says he bought real estate with the card and didn't notice when it ran out of money, and that he will contact his personal secretary. After this, he asks the waiter where the toilets are in this restaurant, and, having received an answer, goes to the toilet, promising to return soon. Sui-chin runs past a mysterious young man in a black hooded jacket who was standing nearby with his head down. The boy grabs a passerby by one of the metal decorations on his jacket, but does not stop. A passerby with red eyes casts a mysterious glance at Sui-chin, as if he had known him for a long time. Meanwhile, the guy himself is sitting in the toilet, accompanied by the ghost of the system, and asking himself how it happened that there is no money on the card. Eventually, he pulls himself together and decides to call Carly's butler to find out everything. The girl immediately picks up the phone and asks how she can help her owner. Sui-chin aggressively asks why there is no money on the card she gave him, promising to kick her ass if he doesn't get a clear explanation. Carly explains that this is because dividends are paid annually, so there won't be any new income until next year, adding that she's explained this before. Furthermore, the maid asks what the boy wanted to do to her, saying that even if it was not so, she could help. After this, Sui-chin hangs up and looks at his phone in despair. Then, with tears in his eyes, he begins to beg the ghost of the system to help him get out of this situation with dignity. Meanwhile, the order had already been prepared and delivered to the company's table, and the waiter wished Yuxian and her friend a bon appetit. Meanwhile, the female driver is worried and wondering why Sui-chin has been absent for so long and thinks something is wrong. She also asks her friend why she thought she and the guy were childhood friends instead of being in a romantic relationship, and if she was worried about the whole encounter. Yuxian says that if the boy wants to make a fool of himself, then let him do it with all the consequences, such as washing the floor and dishes as punishment for this dinner. After this, she invites her friend to try all the dishes brought, claiming that they are very tasty. The driver replies that it's not that she doesn't want to eat it all, but that she's afraid, to which Yuxian asks what exactly she's afraid of. The girl replies that if Sui-chin is really pretending, then those who ate, that is, the two of them, will have to pay. Hearing this, Yuxian stops eating with a tense expression, realizing what this guy has gotten her into. Later, they both look at the 500,000 yuan bill and can't believe their eyes. Yuxian tearfully asks how many dishes they would have to wash to earn that amount, to which her friend sarcastically replies that she is very smart because she tried all the dishes. However, the driver later said she doubted that Sui-chin was actually pretending. Yuxian says that the boy better not pretend that he can pay that amount of money to go to a restaurant. To this she adds that in any case, such pretense will not lead to anything good. Meanwhile, in the toilet stall, negotiations are taking place between the ghost and Sui-chin. The ghost is ready to provide a service, but at the cost of a fortune. This man claims that the ideal system of life must help him, otherwise it has no meaning. To this, the ghost replies that Sui-chin must be aware of his sinfulness, and that he came to this earth to atone for his sins. The guy awkwardly asks how much it will cost him to ask a ghost for help. The ghost shows a panel depicting an ideal life system, which also shows a gift box tied with a ribbon, and says that it will only cost 500,000 yuan. However, he continues to claim that the price for such a gift is enormous 3% of virtue, which shocks Sui-chin, who states that without this percentage he would die. However, it is enough to tell the ghost that he is taking this gift back, and the boy orders him to wait. Sui-chin says that from his earliest childhood, only Uncle Han was kind to him, helped him, and understood him, despite all the circumstances. That is why he does not intend to disgrace himself in front of his daughter, even if the price for it is too high. Thus, having made an agreement with the ghost, Sui-chin returns with the money to his companions. He addresses them politely and apologizes for making him wait so long. The man tries to explain that he got the wrong card last time, so he'll just go and pay the bill now, but Yuxian says someone else already paid. Sui-chin can only guess what the girl said and who could have paid his bill. Yuxian angrily stated that she didn't know the man, he just paid the bill and left, and before that, in a commanding tone, she asked him not to get on her nerves. In response, Sui-chin tells her not to look down on him so much, noting that he is rich and can even afford simple food. The girl interrupts him and orders him to stop all these tirades about wealth. She says she doesn't know what happened to Sui-chin all these years, but her father just wanted him to come down to earth and live a simple, good life. To this, Yuxian added with a cold expression that this was clearly not destined to happen yet. She leaves the restaurant with her friend and tells Sui-chin to behave decently from now on. Sui-chin recalls how, since childhood, he has almost always been unlucky, and he has always understood this. He recalls an old school incident when his classmate won a rare playing card, and he got a very common one. While thinking about why people get what he wants, the boy noticed a strange ability in himself, beyond his own bad luck. Whenever Sui-chin is unlucky, the bad luck of those around him is proportional to his own. He remembers an incident when his mother came to him with great news about new clients for her company. That day, Mom noticed that Sui-chin, despite such good news, was still sad. She saw that the boy was holding something in his hands, a piece of paper, and asked him to show him what it was. At some point, she can't take it anymore and snatches the papers from her son's hands. Thanks to this document, her application for admission to a technical school was accepted, which surprised her greatly, since her son dreamed of going to university. To this, Sui-chin responds that he accidentally applied for another position, mentally preparing for an argument. His mother slapped him hard on the cheek, so hard that the boy could hardly stand still. She says that this cycle repeats itself endlessly, that everything is starting to improve for her, when suddenly bad news comes from Sui-chin. The mother says that she can no longer tolerate this prolonged torture, and that the boy must stop bullying her. And suddenly Sui-chin wakes up from this nightmare in the bedroom of his new luxurious mansion. He thinks about how disgusting and nightmarish this dream is, and how much he doesn't want to remember it from his life. Suddenly he felt Carly's finger touch his head, and the maid asked what happened. The guy, not expecting to see her so close this morning, throws his hand away and asks what it is. Later Carly comments that her owner looks a little tired and asks if he wants something to eat, to which he replies yes. A few minutes later, at breakfast, Sui-chin comments on how delicious everything is. Carly claims that preparing the dishes for his dinner is her responsibility, and the boy praises her skills. The girl claims that she is Sui-chin's personal butler and maid, so he can turn to her for any reason, and adds that she has a degree in psychology. The boy opens his mouth to tell her about his problems, but something stops him. In the end, Sui-chin declares that everything is fine and that none of this matters, and turns away from his maid. At this moment, the maid suddenly pounces on her master and strangely grabs him by the shoulders. Sui-chin, unable to resist the girl, asks what exactly she is doing. Carly looks surprised and says that it's okay if the master doesn't want to talk to her, adding that she'll do her best. This caused fear and tension to appear on Sui-chin's face, and he didn't understand what was going to happen next. For some time, sounds were coming from the master's bedroom that could easily be mistaken for something indecent. However, Carly simply massaged Sui-chin's head, then asked if he was feeling better, and received a positive answer. At one point, the man asked the maid how many resources he currently has. Dvoretsky lists assets including a 1% stake in Galaxy Group, a luxury estate, 4 properties in the Jiangyang district, and 1 office building. Hearing this, Sui-chin thanked her, put on his jacket and walked out of the bedroom. He could later be seen near a notice board in the Jiangyang residential complex, posting ads for his properties. In parallel with this exercise, he believed that all his problems had only one cause. The root of all of Sui Chen's problems was the lack of money, which is what he was thinking about as he continued to post ads. Once he solves this main problem, all other problems will be solved simultaneously. This guy was thinking about how he didn't want to be just an ordinary homeowner, of which there are plenty in the city and throughout the country. Suddenly, on the almost empty street opposite, Sui Chen sees the guy in the dark jacket he saw in the restaurant. For a moment the figure simply stood there, head bowed, and did not say a word. Sui Chen decides to ask what happened, remembering how that boy suddenly appeared and scared him. The interlocutor says that he is glad to finally find him and introduces himself as the one who paid at the restaurant. In response, Sui Chen somewhat awkwardly thanks the boy, not expecting anything special. He doesn't even realize that this is the man who paid for him. He asks if this man has come to return the money, adding that he will definitely return everything. However, the interlocutor ignored this and said that he was waiting for an opportunity to be alone with him, but could not, because Sui Chen was always busy with someone. At this point, Sui Chen decides that this weirdo doesn't need money, but his body. The interlocutor says that he can't stand it anymore, and quickly runs to the boy. Meanwhile, Sui Chen takes a defensive stance, and tells him not to come any closer than he actually is. Suddenly he even decides to fall on his knees and pray for mercy for his body. However, for some unknown reason, the stranger did the same, falling to his knees right in front of him. The boys began to say different things in unison. Sui Chen said that he did not like men, and the stranger called him the god of evil. The stranger claimed that he had been searching for him for a very long time, overcoming mountains and fires, hard lands and mud, to reunite with him. When Sui Chen asks who is standing in front of him, the boy asks if he doesn't remember him at all. The next moment, the stranger removes his hood and introduces himself as the younger brother of the evil god Sui Chen, Mota. Memories lead Motu to the dark palace of the god of evil, where he hurries to tell the deity the news. He rushes at supersonic speed through the dark halls filled with black columns, towards the evil deity, clearly agitated. Eventually, Motu appears before the god, seated on a black throne with spikes, and says that something very important has happened. The Lord of all evil asks in a calm tone what exactly happened that was of such great importance. Motu claims that he predicted the future not long ago, and from this he learned that the other gods were preparing to impose sanctions on him. He says that this time the gods might be real, so he asks the teams to prepare an army to fight the gods. However, the Lord of all evil almost indifferently refuses his younger brother, saying that there is no need for it. Motu only asks with delight why not, clearly not understanding his master's plans. To this the deity replies that the gods are already here, after which the dark walls of the palace are filled with golden light. They declared with one voice that the end of the evil god was incredibly close, proclaiming it like thunder from the heavens. The dark god places his hand on his younger brother's shoulder as a sign of trust and blessing. He says that he trusts his subordinate, and therefore Motu must leave this place as soon as possible. The deity states that there is no room for risk in this battle. The Dark Lord then grows enormous bat-like wings and prepares for his final battle. Flying into the golden sky, he says that when he kills the gods, Motu will come back for him. And just like that, in the golden light, he disappears to the desperate cries of his younger brother. So Motu finishes this story, telling it to Sui Chen and wiping away her tears with a white handkerchief. The boy adds that after a great battle, the god of evil was banished to earth, and he secretly made his way here, and after hundreds of years they were finally reunited. Sui Chen, meanwhile, listened attentively, not knowing what to do with this information, and eventually decided to ask about further plans. Motu says that, of course, Sui Chen must first return and take revenge on the gods who put him in this position. He says his magical powers have little effect here, but that's hardly a problem for the great, bloodthirsty, and all-powerful god of evil. However, in the middle of this speech, Motu noticed how his master climbed up the tree after the cat, which was stuck in the branches. Suddenly, Sui Chen hears a branch snap beneath him and notices that it is barely holding him and the cat together. And then the next moment, quite predictably, he falls to the ground under a tree along with the cat. The boy happily picks up the animal and is glad that it was saved. Meanwhile, a shocked Motu says that his master is doing far from what he should be doing. Eventually, Sui Chen releases the cat and explains that whoever he was in his past life, he is now just an ordinary person who is 10,000 times less fortunate than others. He goes on to state that he must earn virtue points to avoid misfortune and live a good life, and that he has nothing to do with gods and revenge. Frankly surprised, Moda declares that this is a lie and he knows exactly who is standing in front of him. The boy claims that Sui-chin smells like an evil god, and angrily asks how an evil god he has known for so long could have any reason to think such a thing. Sui-chin interprets this smell as the presence of evil energy and asks about it, not understanding why he cannot see it. At this moment, Moda reminds the boy that his divine eye sees everything in the world. Nothing could ever be hidden from his eyes, but because his magic was suppressed in this world, he lost the ability to see the future. After much deliberation, Sui-chin decides to ask if Moda sees the ghost of the system. This vision is reflected in the boy's eye, covered with a magical diamond-shaped mark. However, Moda replies that he doesn't see any traces of the system, but the manner of speaking makes Sui-chin a little suspicious. He turns to the system and says that saving the kitten should add 0.1% to his virtues. Sui-chin says he noticed this when he was helping Lihani and asks if he really needs to do good deeds to gain virtue, to which the ghost replies yes. The boy begins to shake the ghost, asking why he didn't say this before, but he replies that Sui-chin simply didn't ask. He enthusiastically decides that if this is the case, then he shouldn't waste his time and needs to start earning points right now. Meanwhile, Moda sat next to them in a completely depressed state, which finally caught Sui-chin's attention. The god's younger brother thought about how bad things were if the gods were so cruel that they turned the reincarnated evil god into a fool. Eventually, he comes to the conclusion that Sui-chin has simply lost his memories of living as an evil god, and he needs to remind him of it. That's why Moda decides to take his now older brother to a certain place where the memories of the evil god will be revealed to him. Sui-chin just looked at the place where this man had brought him in amazement. It was a strip bar where Moda ordered the management to bring all his girls, declaring that he would take care of everything himself. He says money is not a problem if the staff can serve Sui-chin properly. The boy himself thought that Moda obviously often visited such places, and for some reason connected this with his height. Later, 7 different girls with different appearances came on stage. All 7 took interesting erotic poses. Their leader ordered them to line up and then told them to do everything they had learned in their lives. In an instant, these girls surrounded Sui-chin, started flirting with him and pinching him in different places. Moda watched with satisfaction as the boy tried to fight off the girls. He thought with a smile that such actions should refresh the memory of his teacher and older brother. After some time, Sui-chin was completely exhausted and immobilized by the girls' actions provoked by Moda. He was left with 4 girls, and the bar's patrons were discussing him with great enthusiasm. Suddenly, a man of about 30 notices the table at which Sui-chin is sitting, surrounded by the establishment's female employees. He suddenly recognizes the boy and, smiling broadly, asks if it is really Sui-chin in front of him. The tormented boy begins to remember this boy, and eventually remembers the name Zhou Ping. After this, both boys drank to each other's health and talked about their lives. This guy was very kind to Sui-chin at school and even protected her from bullying. He said that he would get married soon. This surprised the boy, who did not understand why an almost married man would visit such establishments. Zhou Ping says he had difficulties in his life, so he came to this club to drown his sorrows. He adds that he's never ordered girls, so he's not guilty in this regard. Sui-chin decides to question the young man about his problems. Zhou Ping recounts how she wanted to make her wedding more elegant and book a luxury car, but the bureaucracy of the car rental industry made the process impossible. Sui-chin understands that the situation really requires a lot of different preparations and sympathizes with his friend. So he decides to offer to lend his red Ferrari for Zhou Ping's wedding. Instead, Sui-chin hands over the keys as his friend thinks he's joking, because where would he get a Ferrari? However, when Zhou Ping saw the keys, his eyes almost widened in shock. The boy hugs Sui-chin and calls him his lucky angel in exchange for the system notifying him of an additional 0.5% of virtue for helping a friend. He smiles with satisfaction, thinking about how he helped his friend and earned points at the same time. However, suddenly the police burst into this strip bar and order everyone present to put their hands behind their heads. Then they order you not to make any unnecessary movements and to sit on the floor with your heads bowed. 2 police officers spot Zhou Ping and Sui-chin and claim that they are involved in sex crimes and human trafficking, and therefore need to be taken to the station. Thus, the action moves to a police station, where different people are to be detained by their acquaintances. Zhou Ping was followed by his future wife, and Sui Chen was followed by his butler and maid Carly. A Zhou woman grabs her groom by the ear and drags him home, after which he tells his friend not to forget to come to the wedding. Meanwhile, Sui Chen asks Carly where Mota went, but she doesn't know who he's talking about, so he advises her to forget about it. From around the corner of the street, the silhouette of Mota was visible, closely watching his older brother. Later he goes deeper into this alley, as if expecting someone to appear in this darkness. Mota turns to someone and tells him not to be so cunning and to finally confess his orientation to him. His divine eye glows red, and behind him appears the ghost of the system in typical blue tones. The ghost laughs and remarks out loud that Mota can still see him. The next moment, an explosion of dark energy appears to occur around the system. This dark energy gradually approaches Mota and seems to be trying to engulf him with its blackness. However, suddenly in the dark alley a light can be seen that emanated from the boy for a few seconds. After this, the light turned into a powerful purple barrier, which represented a magical protection from such energy. Holding this barrier, Mota says that a simple system cannot have such abilities, adding that the ghost incredibly reminds him of an ancient god of evil. The ghost, with an unchanging smile, says that the boy shouldn't worry so much. Mota angrily asks who this ghost is and why he is hiding from the god of evil. At that very moment, the transparent blue matter that seemed to constitute the ghost of the system disintegrated, turning into the darkness of black energy. A real god of evil appeared before Mota with a smile on his face and introduced himself as just such a god. Some time after these events, Zhou Ping's wedding took place in a beautiful neo-Gothic chapel. The priest asked the bride and groom if they were ready for marriage, to which they unanimously replied that they were ready. He goes on to say that they will be together forever, that they will go through life holding hands, and that they will grow old together. And this time the bride and groom answered in unison that they agreed, smiling at each other. The priest hands the couple a document he calls a happiness pact and asks them to leave their fingerprints on it. Meanwhile, the signing of the lease agreement between Sui Chen and Li Hani proceeds in the same spirit. The girl is glad to put an end to this whole matter, saying that sooner or later she will finally get tired of listening to her mother's calls about this. The system ghost tells Sui Chen that helping a friend pay his rent has increased his virtue level by 0.5%, while the young man thinks about his wedding. Li Hani claims that even though the house belongs to this guy, he still can't enter her room, to which he replies that he doesn't want to. Later, the girl suddenly confesses that Sui Chen actually has real estate, to which he was about to start praising himself, but was suddenly interrupted. Li Hani says she didn't expect the boy's boss to be so kind as to give him not only a car, but also an entire house. Reflecting on how unreliable he is, Sui Chen decides to ask why the girl is renting out the entire house to one person. She explains that she didn't want to rent the entire house, but had to rent an apartment from her brother, located near his school. As for her salary, the girl admitted that she only receives 20,000 yuan, and before that she still has to help her family financially in every possible way. Hearing this, Sui Chen thought that perhaps if it weren't for the system, his entire past life would have been spent in simple and bitter regret. Suddenly he calls out to Li Hani and says that they need to go somewhere. Some time later, closer to dusk, they find themselves on the nearest beach. The girl is running carefree along the sand, and Sui Chen is strolling more discreetly. Li Hani runs barefoot along the water's edge, describing how wonderful and pleasant it is here. Meanwhile, Sui Chen walks calmly, watching his companion. The girl tried to find a simple, almost childish perception of the world around her, and simply enjoy it. Li Hani laughed openly and naively, recovering from endless weeks of work. Sui Chen watched this calmly and thought that he was seeing something truly beautiful. However, he had to say this because his companion splashed water in his face. Li Hani asked what he was talking about, to which the boy replied that he was thinking about the sea and the sun. With a proud posture and a smile on her face, the girl confidently declared that these words were a lie. She then mentions that Sui Chen said at the alumni meeting that he works for Galaxy Group, which he himself confirms the next moment. The girl says that she still works there, so they must be colleagues, and asks where exactly the guy works, to which he awkwardly replies that he works at the main office. Li Hani says with some disappointment that she believes she has finally found a worthy co-author. When Sui Chen asks what she means, the girl tells him not to think too much. Meanwhile, a ghost suddenly appeared before the boy, declaring that he had brought a new system task. This task turned out to be a relatively simple solution to Li Hani's problems, which made Sui-chin incredibly happy. The ghost of the system noted that the task was very difficult, and therefore, for failure, the boy would be fined and deprived of a large number of virtue points. Ghost argues that this is both a risk and an opportunity, comparing it to a bicycle that can turn into a motorcycle, and Sui-chin adds that it can also turn into a stretcher. At the same time, the system claims that there is nothing to fear, since he is always here and ready to help for a fee, and the guy himself declares that he will not do this again. Sui-chin believes that the risk is usually small, but the amount is quite large, and he will not be worse off if he takes on a task and fails even once. Meanwhile, on the next road, someone in a red car was shouting at him to just get over it and accept the situation. It was Moto who constantly shouted that the god of evil must accept the system's task at any cost. He argued that Sui-chin should believe in himself, and that he was capable of anything, and also offered his help. As he drove, Moto thought about how the system couldn't be trusted, and how exactly he could help the boy. Of course, this doesn't fit into the system ghost's plans, so he prepares for action with a displeased expression on his face. Moto realized that something was about to happen to him or his car, and prepared to act as quickly as possible. The ghost simply snapped his translucent blue fingers and put an end to Moto's interference in his affairs, at least for the time being. A large truck appeared in front of the red car, which for an ordinary person would definitely have been tantamount to death. And then the two cars collided, causing a powerful explosion and clouds of black smoke. Seeing this, Sui-chin declares that he has no desire to carry out the proposed task. The ghost just smiled and said that nothing could be done about it. Sui-chin decides to return to his companion and tell her that it is time for them to leave. However, the girl stood motionless and did not respond to the boy's words, so he shouted at her again. Lihani finally looked at her companion with a sad expression and tears in her eyes. At that moment, Sui-chin realized that he didn't care about the task or virtue, he only wanted to help this girl. Lihani recalls one of the unpleasant moments in her life when another character was surrounded by a crowd of journalists. The girl was asked about the secret of her success as a model working for the Galaxy Group, asking her all the typical journalistic questions. Lihani only watched this girl from the shadows, bowing her head and thinking. She thought wearily that this place, which was occupied by a popular model, should have belonged to her. Meanwhile, in her department, the staff were discussing the fact that there was little point in looking stylish unless it was accompanied by the ability to present oneself. One of the employees asked to speak more quietly, but the most active girl said that she had not named anyone in particular, claiming that anyone could get the job. A man suddenly burst into the conversation, claiming that Ms. Lee had been waiting for a long time for the right moment, but for some reason gave the place to another person. Suddenly, the worker felt a dark aura and visibly tensed up, expecting consequences for what he said. Indeed, Lihani appeared from behind the most active purple-haired worker and asked what they had talked about during work hours. The girl tried to somehow get out of this awkward situation and justify herself, but she was suddenly interrupted. Lihani says that if workers want to socialize, they can do so after work, otherwise they will have to work overtime. One of the workers tells the girl that Ms. Zhang is waiting for her, so she leaves her subordinates. The girl who was scolded is especially angry at Li Hanyu, considering her an arrogant monster. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang waits for her subordinate in the office, sipping coffee from a red cup. As soon as Li Hani enters her office, she immediately says that although the position that was supposed to go to her now belongs to someone else, she hopes that this has not been taken too seriously. The girl says that she understands and has nothing against the fact that she is not suitable for certain vacancies due to insufficient qualifications. To this, Ms. Zhang replies with a slight, polite smile that she is glad of her subordinate's opinion. She goes on to say that a new project has emerged, related to the main company Galaxy Group, which is quite specific and complex, and therefore not many are willing to take it on. Ms. Zhang hands Li Han a stack of papers and tells her that she can handle this project better than others. For a moment, Li Hani couldn't believe that she had been given such an opportunity, and was almost speechless. In the end, she promises to live up to her boss's expectations, asking him to schedule a meeting as soon as she has reviewed the documents. Li Hani immediately leaves the office and instructs his subordinate Xiao Li to call all department employees to an emergency meeting. Hearing that the working day is over, she insists on holding the meeting today. Finally, everyone gathered in the conference room, and Li Hani began his presentation about the new project. However, most workers just complain tiredly and irritably that it is already 7 o'clock and they are still at work. One of them even addresses Ms. Lee directly and advises her to conserve her strength, asking for whom she is doing all this. The girl angrily states that she is only doing her job according to the minimum work ethic standards, as a notification from Sui-chin appears on the screen. Employees notice this, feel some tension, and don't know how to react properly. Lee-hani hears a lot of notification sounds and decides to find out what they are. Eventually, she sees a message on the presentation screen from Sui-chin about endocrine system disruption due to stress. Seeing all this, her subordinates began to mock the girl, saying that she had these disorders because she worked too much. In the end, Lee-hani runs out to the toilet in anger and embarrassment, and slams the door with a loud bang. The girl writes to Sui-chin, asking why the hell he is sending these messages, to which he replies that he would like to worry, but does not know what exactly is bothering her. The girl replies that she doesn't need his care and adds him to her blacklist, while the guy has already managed to write a bunch of messages with advice for all occasions. Suddenly, Lee-hani hears someone discussing something in the restroom. Workers noticed her bag and assumed it was probably counterfeit. Afterwards they laugh at the bag and leave, preparing for dinner, which is about to be delivered. And only after that Lee-hani emerges from her toilet stall, tired and with a sad expression on her face. Eventually, she reaches a bus stop lit by a single street lamp and empty of people. The girl realized with fatigue how easy it would be for her to miss a taxi and get home. Lee-hani looked at her bag, wondering if it was fake, considering the store told her it was 100% genuine. In the end, she decides to buy a new one later and think about how to get home for now. Suddenly, a familiar red Ferrari drives past the girl and stops, startling her a little. During the ride, Sui-chin calls her a beautiful lady and invites her into the car. Lee-hani angrily asks why he can't drive properly, considering it's his boss's car. With a somewhat tense expression, Sui-chin says that he is worried about the girl, and that is why he is here. However, Lee-hani claims that she still won't get into that car even if she has to die. Sui-chin then offers to treat her to dinner at any restaurant of the girl's choice. Lee-hani didn't say a word, but her stomach betrayed her, growling loudly throughout the entire stop. She eventually agrees to the proposal, but claims that she only did it because she wanted to. At this moment, Sui-chin opens the car door and invites the girl to get in again. If given a choice of where to go, Lee-hani would choose to visit a market with a variety of traditional foods. She was interested in different things and wanted to try everything, especially seafood. Then the girl noticed something that looked like pasta with a thick red sauce, which also seemed very tasty to her. Sui-chin was somewhat surprised by this choice, stating that, in his opinion, girls prefer fashionable establishments with Michelin stars. Lee-hani replies that she doesn't think street food is bad and doesn't even see much of a difference between street food and fine dining. Holding a glass of broth with meat and vegetables skewered on it, the girl adds that there is no such thing as a free lunch. She says that Sui-chin's boss is very kind to him, but the boy also has to work hard for him, so she takes care of his wallet in this way. To this he awkwardly responds to the girl, thanking her for caring about him. Suddenly, a large, muscular man walks past them, and Sui-chin pulls Lee-hani towards him, warning her to be careful. The girl perceives this as flirting, to which the guy replies that he is simply helping as a friend, and their friendship is pure and innocent. These words calmed Lee-hani down, and she asked him to buy her a cup of milk tea, to which Sui-chin agreed. So the boy stood in line for tea, and nearby he heard the voice of a man praising his wares. The girl overheard us talking about original Louis Vuitton bags that were being sold at very attractive discounts. The man with pink hair and an extravagant mustache selling the bags claimed they were a bargain not to be missed. Lee-hani is surprised by the number of different bag models on the counter, to which the salesperson replies that they have all the latest models. The girl decides to take an interest in a small blue handbag with a gold clasp that slightly resembles a lock. The seller claims that a bag of this type now costs only 8,000, despite the fact that 20 was stamped on the front of the bag. Lee-hani is pondering how much she will suffer financially over the next month if she buys this bag. Eventually, she decides that the price is acceptable to her, and says that she will take the bag, much to the delight of the seller. However, Sui-chin, who had already brought milk tea, suddenly interrupted the conversation, asking about the price of the original Louis Vuitton bag. The seller immediately reacts with irritation, claiming that their bags are indeed original, and adding that there is no point in talking about them if you don't know anything about them. Sui-chin asks the man not to be angry, simply stating that he has heard about Louis Vuitton's policy regarding stores selling their products without permission. He adds that some shops have even lost all their money due to non-payments, and asks how he can sell these bags for 8,000. Frightened by such threats, the seller decides to lower the price to 800 yuan per bag, to which Sui-chin responds that 80 is an acceptable price. The system marks this as the completion of a special task and rewards the person with another 0.5% of his virtues. Sui-chin pays for the bag and hands it to Li-hana along with the tea, for which she thanks him, a little surprised. The guy then says that she shouldn't be wearing such a bag to a fashion company like Galaxy Group and offers to send the original later. However, the girl modestly and confidently declares that she will take this particular bag because she likes it. This interaction and the thoughts about what it could mean made Sui-chin feel a little uneasy. Li-hana, of course, immediately tells him not to think anything like that and that she just likes the bag, to which he replies that he probably thought he liked her. The girl, somewhat irritated and awkward, declares that she doesn't like him and says that they have to go. After some time, Sui-chin and Li-hana went home without any incident. The guy had already been texting her about how the evening had gone, thinking that he had accomplished his task and made her happy. However, Li-hana didn't respond for half an hour, so he simply lazily lay on his bed. Eventually, the guy thinks that maybe the girl is very busy and that's why she doesn't reply to his messages. Later she writes that the evening went as usual and wishes her good night, asking not to write to her, as she is busy. This greatly worries Sui-chin, who thought they had a wonderful time on the scenic walk. The ghost of the system says that if the task is not completed, then the problems are not solved, to which the boy angrily replies that everything is not that simple. The ghost claims he can easily help solve problems by only requiring 2% of his virtue level, and Sui-chin calls him a traitor. Suddenly the boy hears a loud and clear knock on his bedroom window. Through the window, Sui-chin sees Motu, who claims to have brought information about the Galaxy Group of companies and Li-hana's problems that may be related to this company. The system ghost watches the newbie and sends him a telepathic message that he talks too much. The ghost seems to ask the boy who he is talking to, and fear is visible on Motu's face. The evil god's younger brother says it's time for him to leave and then jumps out of the window, much to Sui-chin's dismay. The next moment, as soon as Motu climbed out of the window, the ghost took on the appearance of the Lord of all evil with his dark aura. With a smile on his face, the god said that he would let him go for now, ordering him not to interfere in other people's affairs. After this, Motu jumped from the balcony where the ghost was still standing and quickly landed on the ground. He then ran away in a hurry, thinking that in addition to the system, there was also a maid in this house, and left everything in Sui-chin's care. At that very moment, Carly's butler bursts into the bedroom and tells the boy that they need to go to the Galaxy Group headquarters. She enters the room and bows to the owner, who asks why she appeared so suddenly. The maid claims to have received 2 pieces of news, the first of which is that Sui-chin will be promoted to head of the company's entertainment department. The second piece of news, she said, is that someone inside the company wants to seize power. Meanwhile, a noisy party was taking place in one of the Galaxy Group offices, where employees were drinking large quantities of various alcoholic beverages. One of the workers, pouring drinks into glasses, declared that today they would not go home without arrest. However, before raising their glasses, another employee suggests that they first hear out Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu Kai, acting head of the entertainment department, said that although he is the boss today, his subordinates can do whatever they want without much formality. The company's chairman, Lu Chan, even calls Zhu Kai the true head of the headquarters and the entire Galaxy Group of companies, adding that without him they would not have been able to reach such heights. The man raises his glass in gratitude for the approval of the new project, to which Zhu Kai replies that they are all equal members of the same family. Lu Chang leans towards the entertainment director's ear and announces that he has a gift and asks him to accept it. As soon as Zhu Kai gave his consent, the company chairman looked at the door of the hall and ordered someone to enter. Suddenly, a girl in a black dress and white high-heeled shoes entered the room somewhat hesitantly. She politely addressed Zhu Kai, and he called her our star. In an instant, the girl found herself on the director's lap, said that she would serve him well today, and poured him some wine. However, despite such entertainment, one could also meet quite a few people in a very depressed mood. Among these people was Zhang Dashan, one of the vice presidents of Galaxy Group, who was closely observing everything that was happening around him. Finally, he approaches Zhu Kai and says that he will also drink to him, watching him flirt with the girl the company chairman gave him. The vice president states that the artists in his department need resources, arguing that otherwise they simply cannot survive. Jang Dashim demanded generosity, which greatly angered Zhu Kai during a big party. Finally, the director points to a bottle of strong alcohol in a stern tone and states that he will give his word if the vice president can drink the entire bottle. To this, Jang Dashim replies that he doesn't really like drinking and asks if it was beer or just one glass of the same alcohol. To this, Zhu Kai angrily repeats that he will only give his word if he drinks a whole bottle of strong alcohol. To this he adds that if he tells him to drink, then he should either drink or leave. Finally, Jang Dashim decides to do so, takes a bottle of strange alcohol and starts drinking it in one gulp. Zhu Kai and his subordinates watch this, not believing that anyone could do such a thing. However, after a few seconds the vice president felt ill, and the effect of the alcohol went in the opposite direction. Jang Dashim throws the bottle away and, to the excited cries of his subordinates, vomits violently onto the floor. Taking this as the vice president's defeat in the argument, Zhu Kai orders everyone to clean up after him and leaves the crowd with the girl to do something more private. Some time later, the acting director and the girl got dressed in a toilet stall after unspecified intimate acts. Suddenly, Zhu Kai hears someone calling him and is very surprised. After picking up the phone, the man orders his interlocutor to speak in a calm, restrained tone. The next moment, Zhu Kai, stunned by the news he received, loses his composure and says that he will soon arrive at a certain place. Meanwhile, in one of the Galaxy Group offices, a completely different atmosphere reigned, much more worthy of a large company. Sui Chen sat in the conference room in the chair of the company's entertainment director, accompanied by his butler, Carly, and another man. It was Mr. Lu Fan, the acting director of Galaxy Group, and he stated that Zhu Kai would be there soon. And then he appears, slamming the door dramatically and asking who dared to take his place, telling him to come out to him if he wanted to die. Sui Chen and Carly watched Zhu Kai's speeches, in which he talked about his contributions to the company, and his desire to see who could replace him. Eventually, Lu Fan gives in and orders him to remain silent in Sui Chen's presence. To this, Zhu Kai arrogantly replies that he does not know of any important person with such a name. At this point, Carly turns to Mr. Lu Fan, claiming that when her master is not in the company, there is complete chaos there. After this, the butler pointedly pointed at Sui Chen and said that the director of the entertainment department had already been appointed, but her master did not take up the position due to the project being suspended. At this moment, Zhu Kai, having learned all this information, experiences a terrible shock. Carly continues to say that even an ordinary agent of the company dares to disagree with the appointment of his leadership, and even slightly threatens Lu Fan himself. At this moment, Zhu Kai falls to his knees and begins to beg for forgiveness and understanding. He expresses hope that Sui Chen can forgive him if he has offended him in any way. The new entertainment director says he doesn't need these formalities and asks what else Zhu Kai wanted to do, but Zhu Kai interrupts him. The company's agent claims to have a unique ability to select artists, so he wants to invite him to dinner on the weekend and prepare a gift. Zhu Kai expresses hope that the director will agree, but he immediately sends him away, declaring that he is not interested. Sui Chen leaves with Carly, who points out the company's very poor management, for which Lu Fan apologizes and promises to reprimand her. Zhu Kai only thinks about how much he was humiliated, unable to respond. The next day, Li Hani presented his new project in front of Galaxy Group headquarters, stating that the current strategy allows the company to improve the training of artists. Having stated that all of this requires support from the company's head office, the girl concludes her presentation and bows to the audience. For a moment she expects an indifferent reaction or perhaps even condemnation, something she has become accustomed to in the previous department. However, to Li Hani's great surprise and delight, most of the audience found the performance brilliant, and gave him a round of applause at the end. Later the girl, having recovered from exhaustion, sat down on a white sofa and complained about the intense heat. Ms. Zhang suddenly comes up to her with a bottle of water and says that she needs to drink some water. The woman says she is very pleased with Li Hani's performance, and claims that head office has agreed to invest more in their department. At one point, Ms. Zhang smiles ominously, as if preparing for some action. The director asks the girl if she still wants to work as a cameraman, but she only repeats the question, not understanding its meaning. Ms. Zhang says she asks the question simply because Li Hani is doing a brilliant job in his leadership role. To this, the girl somewhat modestly and awkwardly replies that she always dreamed of becoming a star, of being the center of attention of many. The director says that in this case, she decided to recommend Lihani for a modeling position for one of the company's brands. Hearing this, the girl couldn't help but be shocked and simply didn't know how to thank Madame Zhang. The director advises her not to worry too much, saying that she will have to pay a small price to realize her dream. Lihani immediately asks what the exact price is, completely confused about what the woman means. At best, it's just food and conversations with important investors, which requires some emotional preparation, Ms. Zhang says. The girl begins to have suspicions, so she asks directly if this is some kind of trick. The director says that dinner and conversation are simply a way to get to know investors better, win their trust, and with it money. Seeing the girl hesitant, Mrs. Zhang decides to push her by mentioning Li Xian, who had taken Lihani's place in the past, claiming that she knows more about all this. The woman says it is almost impossible for a young woman to get something without offering something in return. The director says that everyone in this business follows the law and asks if Lihani really knows how to drink well. To this, the girl, bowing her head, replied that she had never lost to anyone in the game of who gets drunk faster. To this, Lihani adds that if this is all that Ms. Zhang wanted to tell her, then she believes her. Meanwhile, in his new office, Sui Chen, accompanied by Carly, addressed his subordinates, apologizing for making them work late on Saturday. The butler says that this is her master's first day at work, so she hopes for cooperation from her subordinates as well. Sui Chen asks the girl to change out of her maid uniform, to which she playfully replies that she thinks he liked it. Finally, after finishing this conversation, Carly decides to introduce the directors of the department that Sui Chen will head. The first was Mr. Chai, who became the head of the directors department, and immediately began praising the beauty of his new boss. The next speaker was Director Ma, who worked in the production department, and he also remarked on the attractiveness of the new leader, for which Sui Chen politely thanked him. He asks Carly who is in charge of the talent department, to which Carly replies that it is Zhu Kai, the same man he saw yesterday. The butler says that he must have kept his identity secret because of what happened yesterday, and adds that he is very useful to the department. Sui Chen says he understands the situation and ends the meeting, adding that he will see Carly out, after which she leaves the office. Meanwhile, the guy sits in a chair and thinks about what torture it is to earn money, dreaming of the simple opportunity to convert a percentage of virtues into material goods. Reflecting on working late, Sui Chen thinks of Lihani and wonders what she is doing now, discarding theories about working overtime. Meanwhile, the girl prepares to introduce herself to investors from the head office and puts on makeup. She is wearing a blue evening dress with a plunging neckline and a slit at the leg, and she thinks the look is too sexy. Suddenly, Lihani receives a call and then a message from Sui Chen asking what she is doing now. The girl thinks that the guy clearly has nothing else to write to her. At some point, Lihani thinks about taking a photo in this dress and sending it to Sui Chen. However, immediately after this, she rejects this idea due to her extreme shyness. Ms. Zhang was waiting outside her house and asked the girl if she was ready, saying that they had to go, to which she replied that she was already going down. After some time, the girl drives up in a luxury car to a majestic and luxurious building in the neoclassical style. After getting out of the car, Lihani couldn't believe her eyes and the fact that everything around her was real. With Ms. Zhang's support, the girl walked along the red carpet, surrounded by numerous cameramen and journalists. Lihani bowed elegantly to the audience, holding her sparkling dress in her hands. At the same time, the girl thought that her long-standing dream of being in the spotlight was finally coming true. One of the photographers called out Lihani's name, asking him to look at the camera and come closer. As soon as she approached, the guy thought it was the perfect moment, and took a beautiful photo. Lihani smiled slightly, and waved her hand in greeting. Her face seemed to glow with happiness. Standing in the crowd next to this photographer was the head of the talent department, Mr. Zhu Kai, with a somewhat sinister smile. Already in the restaurant of this luxurious complex, Ms. Zhang invites Lihani to introduce herself to all the guests. The girl bows and introduces herself as the head of the advertising department of Galaxy Group, as well as a contract model. The guests invite her to sit next to them at the table, and one of the artists compliments Li Hain on her figure. One of the guests extends his hand to the girl and, addressing her as Madam, says that he is pleased to meet her. This guest was Mr. Rin Kai, whom the girl immediately recognized as the actor and star of the film It's Raining. to which he modestly replied that he must be quite famous. Meanwhile, Director Zhang took out a bottle that looked suspiciously like the one in Zhu Kai's office and poured some liquid into the glasses. While pouring the drink and adding a certain white pill, the woman looked at her subordinate Li Hani with an ominous expression. After this, the headmistress hands the girl this glass and says that they should drink to Mr. Rin. Zhu Kai, who was sitting next to her at the table, said that it was better not to drink too much, to which Li Hani replied that he could drink a lot. Hearing this, the head of the talent department thought that since she could drink a lot, she should drink more. However, when the girl drank the drink from the glass poured by the director, she felt like she was losing consciousness. People around her noticed this, and Mrs. Zhang said that she must be a little drunk, and Zhu Kai said that he would help her rest. After some time, the girl was transferred to one of the hotel rooms in this building, and a voice was heard calling her. Zhu Kai realized that it was Sui Chen's call and hung up without thinking. The man was somewhat surprised that Li Hani was acquainted with his current boss. He told her about it, but the girl was in a semi-conscious state due to the drink the headmistress gave her. Zhu Kai, having undressed and climbed on top of the girl, says that he wanted to give Li Hani to his current boss. He continued by stating that since he didn't need her, he would have to take care of her himself. Suddenly, a strange black fog appears in the room in the form of small thick clouds, which distracts the man's attention. Zhu Kai wonders where this fog could come from and suggests that it could be the result of the hotel's poor air circulation system. The man, somewhat tense, with some confusion about what is happening and even a little frightened, decides to open the curtains to let out the fog. Suddenly, the light from the windows, which shouldn't be there at this time, knocks him off his feet, like some kind of magical attack. Zhu Kai falls onto the bed and hits his head on Li Hani's neatly tucked knees. The next moment he feels the touch of the girl's hands on his cheeks, which greatly frightens him with its unexpectedness. What is especially frightening is the realization that a girl in her condition should not have the strength for such gestures, so the man looks up to where she should be. Zhu Kai sees the terrifying figure of Li Hani with a demonic smile and black spots instead of eyes. Seeing this, the man immediately runs out of the hotel room, forgetting why he was there in the first place. Oddly enough, Zhu Kai finds himself in some elevator in his underwear, thinking about what happened to him. Suddenly, the sound of an elevator opening was heard, and the man waited in horror to see what else he would see today. He sees in front of him the silhouette of a woman in a white coat and with short black hair, but he still cannot recognize her. Zhu Kai finally realizes that it is Director Zhang and greets her, saying that she has arrived just in time. The frightened man tells her that Li Hani is a ghost, a true evil and horror that he never thought he would see. Meanwhile, Director Zhang says in a dark tone that she is a gift. Zhu Kai doesn't understand what this means, so he asks again, still frightened by what he saw. The woman continues to repeat that she is a gift, with an indifferent, almost lifeless expression on her face. The next moment, her head seemed to fall off her body, severed by the thin, sharp blade of a huge axe. This head falls to the floor and turns into a black ball that bounces off the floor like a soccer ball. Zhu Kai watches the scene in horror, unable to move from shock and horror. Eventually, the ball will turn bright orange, the eyes will spit out black liquid, and the smile will resemble Li Hani's. The bullet kept claiming it was a gift, and eventually the man passed out from fear, his pants suddenly getting wet. From such a strong shock, Zhu Kai falls into a fit and begins foaming at the mouth. The director and the man lay on the floor of the open elevator, while the ball continued to discuss the gift. Suddenly, a human hand appeared on the elevator door, surrounded by a cluster of dark energy in the form of black smoke. A man, shrouded in black smoke, with an indifferent expression on his face, asked if those present liked the gift. The next moment he begins to laugh and takes on the appearance of the true god of evil, the lord of all darkness. About half an hour ago, Sui Chen reacted angrily and excitedly to Li Hani attending Zhu Kai's dinner party. The guy angrily asks the ghost why he didn't tell him about this before, to which he replies that he didn't ask and, besides, didn't even go to this dinner. Sui Chen tries to call but can't, worried that the girl has never called back before. Meanwhile, the ghost said that Li Hani might be in some man's bed under the influence of drugs, adding that if he was as rich as Zhu Kai, it might even be of his own free will. At this moment, Sui Chen, in a rage, grabs the system ghost, forces its mouth open and orders it to close. The ghost says he has never seen the boy so angry and tells him to hurry, and exchange his percentage of virtue for help. Sui Chen calls him a cheater and tells him not to even try to deceive him, to which he throws up his hands and declares that then the boy will have to figure it out himself. After a short pause and with threats of reprisal, the boy again parts the lips of the ghost of the system. The ghost offers 1% of his true power for 30 minutes in exchange for 10% of his virtues, to which Sui-chan agrees. The system confirms the validity of the transaction and instantly takes 10% of that person's virtues. Sui-chan suddenly found himself surrounded by clouds of dark energy, reminiscent of black smoke and fog, and his thoughts told him to enjoy it, perceiving it as his own power. The next moment, the boy's image changes, he turns into a true god of evil, horns grow on him, and cracks appear on his face. It was because of this power that all the nightmares that Jukai had seen had occurred, and now, half an hour later, Sui-chan's abilities had disappeared and everything had returned to normal. The boy returns to his former appearance, satisfied with the result of his deal with the system. The ghost asks if this is really enough and if the boy suddenly killed Jukai along with the headmistress, to which he replies that they did not commit a crime deserving of death. Sui-chan believes that they just needed to teach them a lesson and put an end to any possible problems in their relationship. After some time, the guy and the system find the hotel room where Lihani was, and immediately call out to the girl, asking if everything is okay with her. Lihani, still wearing a blue sparkly dress, lies on the bed, half-conscious, with her cheeks deeply flushed. The guy remarks how good it is that they managed to survive all of this before Jukai did anything to the girl, to which the ghost replies that he can do whatever comes to his mind. Sui-chan called out to Lihani again, telling her to stand up and promising to free her from here. Suddenly his gaze lingers briefly on the very deep neckline of the girl's luxurious dress. The boy turns away awkwardly, thinking about how defenseless Lihani is in this situation. Suddenly, the girl seemed to fall into a semi-conscious state, and placed her hands on Sui-chan's face. Lihani, with a very tired expression, says that she is very hot and wants a drink. The boy himself notices this feeling of inflammation that has accompanied him from the moment he entered this room. The ghost notices a small pink bottle that was emitting a scent that spread throughout the room and identifies it as an aphrodisiac. The system jokingly thinks it can add a little fire to the tool. And then the next ghost does the same, intensifying the smell and effect of the aphrodisiac, causing it to fill the entire room. Sui-chan and Lihani, who had been quite close before, now found themselves in a very dangerous situation. The boy's cheeks turned red and he found it much more difficult to breathe due to the smell that permeated everything. Meanwhile, the ghost was right behind him, telling him to follow his own instincts and desires. And right after this message, the guy and the girl kiss. At this, Sui-chan grabbed her waist, and Lihani seemed to be trying to say something. However, when the kiss ended, she only slowly said the boy's name. Sui-chan covers his face with his hand and says that he cannot and should not do this. Lihani dispels his doubts, gets out of bed and kisses him back. After the kiss, the girl said that it was just a dream and they had nothing to be afraid of. Hearing this, the boy gives in to his desire and kisses Lihani again, hugging her shoulders. Within seconds they fall on the bed and begin making passionate love. The excitement was so intense that their things flew across the room towards the ghost of the system. That is why he asks with a smile not to look at him like that and quickly leaves the room, dissolving into thin air. Some time later, Sui-chan wakes up in a hotel room with a headache and does not quite understand what happened. He eventually comes to the conclusion that he probably just had an erotic dream. Suddenly the boy hears the ghost of the system calling him playfully, and somewhat mockingly. Sui-chan sees a ghost lying in the same bed with him, and asks how they spent the previous night. The guy asks what the hell the ghost is doing and moves away from him deep into the bed. Suddenly he feels some uneasiness, and notices that Lihani is also sleeping in bed with him. Sui-chan, tense, sweated profusely and, wondering why she was lying there, came to the conclusion that his dream had indeed come true. The boy begins to panic and scream, asking how this could have happened, to which the ghost replies that he doesn't know. The next moment, the ghost's face becomes even more sinister, and he says that he does not understand why Sui-chan is so disappointed, equating women with food and drink, with necessities, in his tirade. Hearing these words, the boy became even more tense and doubted what he had said. He eventually comes to the conclusion that this ghost is the real reason for everything that happened last night. However, Sui-chan later came to the conclusion that even if it were the system, he still would not be able to afford it. The ghost tells the boy not to worry, that once he does, he will find a decent way out of the situation. He hugs the girl and says that he will erase her memory so that she will not even remember what happened between them. The ghost touches Lee Honey's forehead with his finger, concentrating dark energy around her, and continues to say that everything will be as if last night never happened. With a slight smile, he asks if this is funny and claims that the girl will feel better now. Suddenly, Sui-chan removes the ghost's hand from Lee Honey's forehead, causing him to ask what he was even doing. This guy says he used to be reluctant to talk about small things, but now the system has gone too far, and he says it doesn't allow him to do what he wants to do. After this, Sui-chan pushes the ghost away and tells it to go away. The ghost tries to slow down on the floor of the hotel room, but it still carries him quite far. He decides to simply follow the boy's actions, a sly smile appearing on his face. Sui-chan argues that they have no right to erase Lee Honey's memory, and that he should be held accountable for his actions without the help of the system. He then turns to the girl and apologizes, adding that whether she forgives him or not, he will take responsibility for what he did. The ghost continues to suggest erasing the memory, saying it will be easier and more fun. However, Sui-chan does not change his mind and aggressively orders him to shut up. To this he adds that he has already ordered the ghost to leave, and repeats this order. After a short pause of a few seconds, the ghost of the system only laughed rudely in response to such a statement. His figure became both sharper and more ephemeral, and he said with a smile that he didn't know Sui-chan could be aggressive. The ghost grabs the boy by the neck, preventing him from moving and reminding him what a loser he was hiding in the toilet. The ghost's face and Sui-chan's face suddenly begin to merge together, and the former says that he has been a weakling for so long that he has forgotten what kind of boy stands before him. The merging continues and he says that they are one whole and some human values do not matter to them. The ghost even says that he regrets not replacing Sui-chan sooner, to which Sui-chan responds by sending him to hell. However, the voice of his consciousness remembers people close to him, Carly, Motu, and calls for help. Motu was in a slightly different place, and was watching the open sewer hatch. Eventually, the boy decides that he has found a suitable place for himself, and decides to go down. However, Motu simply jumps into this hatch, without relying on any steps, after which the opening of the hatch itself disappears. Before the boy appears a majestic gate, carved into the rock and decorated with various patterns. In the center, instead of a lock, a closed eye is visible. However, this eye sensed the presence of some creature nearby and instantly opened to check who exactly had come. Motu simply says that it is him, without any special introduction, which must mean that he has definitely been recognized. And of course, the eye of that gate, without wasting a second, let the boy through and told him to enter. As soon as Motu appeared in a rather strange room that looked like either a bar or a wine cellar, he was booed. The boy looked at the man who addressed him, but did not answer with a word. It was a middle-aged man who looked like a bartender, and he invited Motu to sit down, saying that formalities were not necessary. After this, according to the mysterious bartender, everything happened as he predicted, and 396 years later the boy returned to him.